Every major technology starts out in a golden age. We initially experienced AI as something frictionless and weightless, a kind of modern magic where the only thing that mattered was raw capability. In that phase, demos are enough. The conversation is entirely about the engineering. Can it work? How fast is the system improving? Which tech team is currently winning the benchmark race? But that awe eventually fades. The technology hits the ground and must interface with the power grid, the zoning board, the regulator, and the messy reality of human infrastructure. The chatbot has been replaced as the primary symbol of the boom. Today, the visible reality of AI is the data center, massive, industrial, and hungry for enormous amounts of energy and water. At this point, the questions change. People stop asking what the software can do and start asking who pays for it, who regulates it, and whose neighborhood must be rearranged to make room for it. This friction is deeper than a failure to explain the technology attractively. AI has reached a threshold where its continued adoption depends entirely on its political legitimacy. The unease around AI is taking the shape of highly localized physical political battles over substations, scarce power resources, and environmental permits. Promised breakthroughs like a cure for cancer remain vague and distant. Meanwhile, the costs are arriving in ordinary units: a higher electricity bill, a disruptive construction project, or a changed entry-level job market. AI enters the economy through a subtle delegation called taking over by trick. Institutions preserve the ceremony of human judgment. A person signs the paperwork, but the substantive work, the triage, filtering, and ranking, is already delegated to an algorithm underneath. This silent delegation strips away the recognizable sites of accountability. Political and legal systems require a specific person to hold responsible, but those roles are being hollowed out even as their outward form remains intact. You end up with a society that appears booming and highly profitable at the executive level, while its foundational layers of human dignity and responsibility are quietly rewired and broken. This hollowing out extends deep into our culture, specifically through the volume of cheap, synthetic information currently flooding the public sphere. Information warfare doesn't rely on convincing the public of one grand lie. Its real power lies in velocity and variety. The goal is to deploy an overwhelming volume of slop that makes verification too expensive for any individual to afford. Citizens targeted by this cumulative overload don't necessarily become indoctrinated. They become exhausted. They become tribal and cynical, gradually losing the capacity to reason because the effort required to find the truth feels insurmountable. This exhaustion forces a new kind of social dependency. People surrender to whatever familiar interface or recommendation feed lowers their cognitive friction, letting the machine decide what is worth their attention. These platforms have evolved into governors of salience. They control the narrative environment, deciding which fabrications travel, which doubts feel expensive, and which voices acquire the halo of authenticity. This infrastructure effectively dictates what a society believes is real. When a state loses the ability to shape that environment, it is, in a meaningful sense, renting its own public sphere from whoever built the system. At that point, the recommendation engine becomes an issue of national sovereignty. We've seen this kind of transition before. Look at the shift from mechanical timepieces to quartz watches. Once quartz technology made highly accurate timekeeping incredibly cheap, raw performance stopped being the decisive factor for survival. The same structural shift is now hitting the world of intelligence. When intelligence is a commodity, the survival of an AI system won't depend on a benchmark score. It will depend on institutional trust, safe procurement, and which vendors can survive their first real public scandal. The conflict of the next decade centers on the bearability of these social compromises, the price we pay for the systems that run our lives. As psychiatrist Viktor Frankl observed, between a stimulus and a response, there is a space, and in that space lies our power to choose, our growth, and our freedom. Automated algorithms are designed to entirely collapse that space in the name of convenience. Our role isn't to outcompute the machine or compete with it at its own game. Our job is heavier. We have to retain the authority to preserve that space for human judgment. Look at the automated system and say, this far and no further.